podcast. It comes out once a week, and this is just a small little introduction video into the podcast. So, down below in the description of each episode, you can go to my Linktree and find links to everything connected to me. This podcast is available on YouTube, which you're watching it on right now, and also on Spotify. But yeah, that is just a small introduction into this podcast and everything that goes along with it. Hello, welcome back to the podcast. For those of you who are keen eyed, you'll probably notice that I am not in the usual place recording because I am in a hotel room. One, two, three, four. So I'm gonna try and bulk record a couple of episodes today. The hotel that I'm staying at it's in Dublin city centre, and also you probably hear sirens in the background because it's Dublin. But yeah, so I've also have good news. I feel kind of bad because why do I feel bad? I'll tell you why. But I feel more stupid than bad, to be honest, because what happened, I so yeah, I have fixed the problem where I read the instructions for this thing because it was pissing me off for the broad audio interference that I got around Christmas time as to why I couldn't hear myself when I was recording. And the reason is because there's two knobs on the thing. I didn't realize there were also buttons. So that is my fault because I didn't read the instructions because I'm a big dummy. So that's, I suppose, the bad thing. But the good thing is this episode is a Kill Tony episode review 702. The and also I can't I think I mentioned it briefly in a different episode where I talked about like going to Vienna and stuff, that I heard a great Joey Diaz story from a comedian when we were hanging out in Vienna. I'm gonna briefly just talk about that because like there was give me a second. There's so many wires everywhere. But yeah, so I'll go into Joey Diaz story. So we were in the green room of one of the comedy clubs in Vienna with a couple of comedians. This was, I think, if I remember correctly, Friday night after I did PowerPoint karaoke. Because PowerPoint karaoke was in like a hostel, so I went over to this comedy club afterwards to meet with Malinda and the local comics. And we were just sitting around talking after the show, and there was a comedian there who lived in LA, who performed at the world famous comedy store. And we were just talking, and I go, do you ever meet Joey Diaz? And he was like, oh yeah. He said that Joey would never remember his name. He would call him by the country that he was from. So every time he referred to this person, he would just call him by his country. So for example, if it was for me, he'd be like, hey Russian, come over here. And it's just a very, very funny moment. It was a great entertaining story. And like, because I'm a huge Joey Diaz fan. A lot of the stuff I do in comedy, like keeping notebooks and stuff like that about shows, is from his advice. So it's just kind of very, very funny to hear a story. There was a couple of just talking about LA and stuff in general, because a lot of the American comedians I would have liked have all performed at the store, which is very fun. So on to the other thing, which was the Kill Tony episode 702. So it basically, if you are familiar with Protect Our Parks, which is I suppose the best way to put it is like like Joe Rogan does a couple of things on his podcast. One is like the MMA fight things. Like if he could, because Joe Rogan is a commentator for the UFC. So if he's not at the fights, he does these like fight companion things where he invites like comedians who like MMA or do MMA or like different people in MMA like Eddie Bravo, Brendan Schaub. I don't think Brian Callen does MMA, but he might be doing Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So one of these things that Rogan came up with a couple of comedians was something called Protect Our Parks. It was just basically it was him, Mark Normand, Shane Gillis, and Ari Shaffir. Like three of the funniest comics working and touring around the world and in the US at the moment. And funnily, actually, all three. I think I'm not sure if I think Ari has been to Ireland. I know he's definitely been to the UK because he's been to the Edinburgh Fringe. Gillis has been to the UK or to Ireland a couple of times. Mark Normand, as he well know, I met him when he came to Ireland a little while back. And so basically, they had because they were over because Rogan lives in Texas, so they were over there shooting for Protect Our Parks, and they were all guests on that specific Kiltony episode. And the reason Protect Our Parks is very fun, even if you like aren't a huge Joe Rogan fan, it's good to watch as a comedy fan because there's like such good chemistry between them. They always like make crack funny jokes. It's like and they're really long episodes as well. So it's about an average 3.5 to 5 hours long episode, and it's just very very funny stuff. And they come up with they they have like a rhyming thing that they've been doing for a couple of episodes, trying for jokes. One that was started was like Shane Gillis kept saying that's nice, and then Matt Rice, and during the Kill Tony thing they kept mentioning it, which was very very funny. The Kill Tony episode in itself, there was a couple of comedians that were actually very I think got pulled out. I got bucket that were good, but I kind of Kill Tony because it's very very chaotic. So sometimes it's good bucket pulls, other times it's not. So it's kind of a mix. You're not always going to get gold because some people that get pulled from it are because like I've explained before, because before Kill Tony when they did it, they used to all like stand in the alley behind the comedy mothership. That's where they shoot it. That's Joe Rogan's comedy club in where does he live? In not Houston. Where does he live in Texas? Let me check. Yeah, so it's in Austin. I was going to say El Paso, but I knew it wasn't El Paso. So he's based in Austin. That's where Red Band's Comedy Club is. It's actually in the same street. It's called the Sunset Strip. And yeah, so they were all down there. It was, yeah, like I said, it was a fairly interesting episode. Because like I said, what made it fun is because the guys who do Protect Our Parks have really good chemistry. So for me personally, because I enjoyed the, because I like watching Protect Our Parks. It was a good episode in that regard. Um, Yeah, oh yeah, I mentioned so they don't have the people who sign up on the night stand in the alleyway anymore. What they do nowadays is they are in a bar across the road, and basically the producers when their name gets pulled out of the bucket, they go as Tony calls it, and they wrangle them from across the street, and then they come in and perform. Um, have to stop saying So yeah, very very glad that I figured out, well, not figured out, because it was after the last time I batch recorded episodes. I kind of looked at the yeah no I was putting the equipment away, and how I realized I that I should probably go either look at a video or read the instructions, because when I was putting it away, I picked up the top of the interference and one of the buttons clicked. There's two knob control things. One of them is volume for the headphones to when you're doing, I suppose, like audio feedback or monitoring, like I'm doing right now. And the other thing is that this is a dynamic microphone. So the other one that I had, the other Rode, that's a condenser microphone. It's primarily better suited for music and stuff. Like I said, I got it off my friend who's a musician. And so this actually, the button on the other side is actually a thing called for required for phantom power. Phantom power is 48 volts. It's required for condenser microphones because they need slightly higher voltage than this. I don't have it on because this is a dynamic microphone. The condenser microphone is picking up a lot of audio in the background, whereas this one doesn't really. Oh, well, it kind of does and it doesn't. For example, like you, at the start of this episode, you probably would have heard the police sirens flying by. Not the police, we have Garda in Ireland. But yeah, so glad that's all sorted and figured out. That's I think that's pretty much it for this episode. Like I said, I'm bulk recording a bunch of these, so as per usual, thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and I shall see you all in the next one. Bye bye.